On today's video, we're going to be reviewing what this thing is. What's that?
Subscribe.
Hey YouTube, what's going on? This is Gabe coming back at you with a brand new video here at Trucking Life. Hopefully you guys are doing pretty good today. I wanted to go ahead and give my thoughts and my reviews on the OPS system, Oil Purification System. I'm not affiliated with them. I'm not sponsored by them. None of that stuff. It's just a good old honest review on my findings about it or whatever. So let me go ahead and review the components. I'm going to show you guys some sample reports on how I did in my truck, what I found, what it improved or what didn't improve. Like, at the end of the day, what this video is targeted to is, does the damn thing actually work? I was scouring through YouTube and I wasn't able to find many reviews like on that particular system. That OPS system's not an old system. Like, it's been out for a lot of years now. I've had it since 2016, so 8 years now. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the components, and then we'll go ahead and get into my thoughts. All right, guys, so this is the actual system. This is your inlet where the oil goes in. You can turn it off and on right here. This hose right here goes down to the oil pan right there. This is your 10-inch filter, and this is your head unit. The electrical connections go to your alternator. You got your negative and your positive, and then you got your fuse right here. So it turns off and on by itself. And then you got your evaporation port right here, that hose right there. It's a pretty straightforward installation. You just have to find a port somewhere in your oil filters. Mine's happen to be, it's that line right there. All you pretty much do is remove a plug, and then you plumb that one in there, and it gets oil pressure, it goes through the system, and it goes back. But that's just the basic thing on how it works. You know what I mean? Here we got a pressure sensor that turns it off and on, and then this port right here is where you're able to get your oil samples on. You unscrew that little cap right there, and you get your oil samples and whatnot. So it's a pretty easy installation process. I installed it myself. I believe the unit, man, back then I think it was like $900 or whatever. It comes with the hoses, you know, the clamps and the electrical. You know, it's pretty easy to connect. It's just your positive and negative cable. They recommended you connecting it at the alternator, and it has that pressure switch. So basically what this unit does, from my understanding, I'm not an expert at this or nothing, but basically what it does is, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a little bit on how oil filters work. And a lot of people assume that every filter is the same, but it really isn't. Every filter has a micron rate. The higher the micron rating is, the more flow the filter is going to have, but it's going to catch less particulates. The lower the micron fitting, you know, the fibers, you know, and I'll put some screenshots on how the fibers looks. They're like more tightly woven, you know what I mean? Like they're just tighter, and it catches more particles. So a typical full flow filter, which is what your truck is gonna have, you know, because if they make it too restrictive, then you're not gonna have oil flow and you're gonna damage the engine. So it has to have, I believe they're about like 30 microns or so, 25 microns, 30 microns. I might be a little off on it or whatever. Like, once I actually find out what the actual rating is, I'll go ahead and, you know, put it down here or whatever. But I believe that's more or less where they're at, because it allows more flow, you know, to the critical components that need oil pressure. The difference between these filters is that it's a secondary filter. That's what's called an oil bypass filter. And typically those filters are a lot less in microns. This particular system has a 3-micron rating. So meaning less oil goes through it, but it filters it better. And it allows it to go back into the engine as a secondary filter. So you still got your full flow filters working, but then you got your oil purification system working in the background. So I believe from my research that I did initially, I think it does like about a gallon an hour. So you drive 10, 11 hours or whatever, it'll pretty much go one cycle over, but it catches those fine particulates. And one of the main reasons on why I installed it, there's claims out there, Kevin Rutherford used to talk a lot about it. That's how I found out about it, where, they pretty much want you to run your oil longer, and in certain cases that may be the case, because with these trucks now in these days, oils have gotten better, synthetics and everything. You could go a little bit more of a distance, before you have to change your oil. However, what a lot of people fail to realize is that that's extending your oil drains and also having oil samples to it so that you're actually able to look at how your oil's doing. It's not just extended to X amount of miles and keep on rolling it. So what I initially did in the beginning was I would run the oil a certain amount of time, let's just say 10,000 miles. I would do an oil sample, then I would run it like another 5,000, do another oil sample. So I was able to get a baseline on where my engine needs to get the oil changed. And in my particular case, it ended up being that right around 15,000 to 20,000 miles, that's when the oil, my total base number would start dropping, and it would start getting acidic and bad. But the whole purpose of me installing that unit was because I wanted to get rid of the soot that goes into the oil, because my truck does have a DPF filter. It has an EGR valve. I haven't deleted anything or nothing. It works the way it was designed to work, and it just runs dirtier. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of oil samples that I got. They're old oil samples because I don't really do them anymore. I did them in the beginning just to get that baseline, and I did it for a good while, and I kind of found that 15, 20,000 miles, that's my mark. Okay guys, so here we have a sample report that I had submitted. This was the very first one that I did. I did it in the 25th of November of 2018. I mentioned that I've had this system for quite a while. So I used Shell Rotella T6 full synthetic 5W40. And this is the comment section that I was telling you about. They're pretty good about telling you exactly what this report means. Because a lot of this stuff right here, when I originally got it, was like, what the heck is all this crap? You know what I mean? You got iron, chromium, nickel, and you can call them up and they'll explain it to you a lot better than what I can explain it to you. I'm just showing you this as an example on things that I noticed. So the number one thing that they flagged in this particular sample was right here, 3.9 GC fuel dilution. So it was kind of medium. At this particular time, I was having problems with my first set of injectors that I changed. They were overfueling a little bit, so a lot of that fuel dilution was getting into the oil. The soot percentage was at 1.2, which was still, it was pretty decent. It wasn't like cause for concern. I remember I had called them and asked them about it, but my viscosity was starting to get low. My total base number on the oil was super low. It was at 2.11, and my oxidation was super high. So basically what they said in this particular oil sample was, it's time to change the oil. This particular sample had 34,700 miles on the lube time. That's how long I had the oil in the engine. And I was just experimenting at this point, doing extended oil drains, right? Because we all try to save a little bit of money on oil. But that's the reason why I went ahead and did it at that time. And this is the report that came out to be. So let me go ahead and show you guys a different report. On this report, same thing, you guys can see the previous ones right here. Okay, as you guys can see, it went from that 4.1, and then it dropped down to 3.3, and then 3.9, and it shows you your TBN number starts getting a little bit better. But the number one thing that I want you guys to notice here, which is what I noticed here, is All this stuff right here, according to them, was still pretty good. So I didn't worry about none of that. But here on the report, this right here, fuel dilution, I knew that it was because of my failing injectors, which at this point, I still hadn't changed them because, you know, they cost money and they're expensive. So I know that they were still overfueling a little bit. So a lot of that extra fuel was getting into my crankcase, which was getting into my oil. But this is the biggest thing that I noticed once I actually started using the unit. The soot, which is originally why I purchased the system. It wasn't so much for that I can gain extended oil drains so I can get more miles out of it. I just wanted to run the oil cleaner. That very first sample was at 1.2%. That second sample went down to below 0.1. And then that third sample was 0.3. So as you can see, the oil was definitely running cleaner. All that EGR crap that's in there, all that soot that gets in the oil was getting captured by that system. Then here, the water percentages pretty much stayed the same. My TBN numbers right here were, kind of going up and down, and then my total base number as well. But my oxidation level started going a little bit down. Where I came into conclusion is that first sample, I did it to 34,700 miles. The second one, it only had 10,000 miles on it. So as you can see, besides this fuel dilution, which they flagged green, which was still acceptable, all my other numbers were good. And then this one at 20,000 miles, that's when my TBN started dropping down low and the oil started getting oxidized and my viscosity started going down. So that's where I got my number, between 15,000 to 20,000 miles. That's when I know I need to change my oil based on these reports, because at 10,000 we were good. I did another one at 15,000, but due to the fact that these reports are kind of old, as you guys can see right here, I couldn't find it. But I did do one at 15,000 and my oil was still good. So that's where I got my number. Between 15,000 and 20,000 miles is where I do my oil changes at. But as you guys can see, that system right there, it does work. It does bring the soot level down. It has no water in my oil or anything like that. It was just basically playing around with the numbers to see where we're at. In conclusion, do I think the system is worth it? I personally think it's worth it. Again, when I initially bought the system, I was looking more of the engine oil running cleaner, not necessarily looking for an extended oil drain. But the cool thing with these oil samples is that you're able to get a baseline on your particular truck, because every truck is different. Where should I change my oil at? Most manufacturers recommend a certain oil drain. Like I said, I know that on the new trucks, the DD15, they recommend 50,000 miles. But in the fine print, it says you got to do it with oil samples. So it might get up to that, but maybe it doesn't. And the only way you're going to know is by doing the oil samples. I've had that system since 2016, so right about 8 years now. I haven't had no issues with it, other than buying the filters. Those filters usually last between 25 and 30,000 miles. Basically what I do is I just change them every other oil change, which would be 30,000 miles. I try to do my oil changes at 15,000. I normally don't let it go over 20. So between 15 and 20, you know how it is, guys. Sometimes you guys get home and, if it's like 14,900 miles or 14,800, I go ahead and change it. But if it's kind of close by to where I can still, get another trip in there to where it won't go over 20,000, then that's what I do. But another thing that I wanted to mention that this system does, besides filtering the oil down to 3 microns, so it gets more crap out. As you guys can see on those reports, my soot level went down. And another cool thing that it does is that head unit, the reason why it's connected to power is because it has a heating element in there. And what that does is that it gets rid of any condensation, any moisture that might be present in the oil. Especially for you guys that run maybe up north or whatever, where it's like really cold or whatever, sometimes these engines can create condensation if the oil's been sitting for a little bit. So if you turn your truck off, you all know what condensation is. And if you don't, grab a cold soda with ice on a hot day, and you're gonna see what happens to the glass. It's gonna get wet and you're gonna have that condensation going in there. It's pretty much the same thing that happens to the engine. So it pretty much gets all that stuff out and it evaporates it out of that tube that I showed you guys. And so that's good for the engine. You don't want to have no moisture, no water at all in the oil. So it gets rid of all that. As you guys can see there in the reports that I just showed you, it's pretty much, it's always been 0.1 or less. But where I noticed the biggest change when I installed this system was in the soot level. You know, it started off at 1.2%, and it went down to below 0.1 and then below 0.3. You know, I did have some other reports, but I just don't have them saved on my computer anymore. I had those reports there in my computer, but ever since I installed that system, it's always at 0.1 or less. So it's definitely doing something. It's getting that oil clean, and it's getting rid of all those contaminants that go in through the EGR and the combustion process as well, you know? So for me, in my opinion, I think it's worth it. You know, like I said, I think the unit was about $900 when I bought it. And the filters right now, I think you can get 5 filters for like $245 or something like that. You know, but remember, each filter is about 30,000 miles. So every other oil changes is when I do it or whatever. And I know that OPS sold their brand to Pittsburgh Power. So that's where you would get your unit at. You give them your truck information, and they'll send you the whole entire kit. Like I said, I'm not advocating for them, or I'm not, you know, promoting the product or whatever. I've always told you guys that if ever I find a good product or whatever, I want to, you know, give you an honest review, and that's my honest review. I think the system is worth it, because it makes your engine run a lot cleaner, and it's proven by results. It's not just an I think. You know, you can actually physically see it in the reports. But I know that there's other companies that make them, like AMSOIL, I know has their own bypass filter stuff. But I've had good luck with it. You know, I haven't had any issues with it as far as the head unit itself. The only thing I've had to replace on that actual unit was just the pressure sensor. And because it went out and it would always stay on. So it turns off, turns on by itself with that pressure sensor. I think that pressure sensor was only like $20 or something like that. Not a big deal. But yeah, you know, it works pretty good. I would recommend you getting it on your truck. And I mean, the best maintenance that you can give on your truck is keeping your oil clean, you know, putting fresh oil in there, you know, because everything that oil touches it's critical. You know, I mean, you run an engine with low oil pressure or no oil pressure, and it's going to destroy stuff, you know, especially for those of you who are running the newer types of trucks. You know, I have the Detroit Series 60 engine, which is the older side of the engine, but you get on these X15s, man, Cummins, or you get these DD15s, DD16s or whatever, the tolerances are super tight, man. I mean, you lose, I'm telling you guys, I'm seeing it there at the shop that I use. You know, a truck came in, it literally lost oil pressure 30 seconds, and it destroyed the cam. It destroyed the cam and the crank, and it was a rebuild at that point, and the truck wasn't that old. So anything that you can do to make your oil better, not necessarily last longer, I mean, that might be your case, but the only way you're gonna know that is by submitting oil samples. But that's my 2 cents about it, man. Hopefully this helps somebody out. Again, I was scouring the internet, and I remember when I was looking into it, I really couldn't find videos on that oil purification system other than just like the general marketing that they do or whatever. But I wanted to get somebody who actually drives, who actually uses it, like does the damn thing work. And in my opinion, I think it's worth it. You know, it's cheap insurance to make sure that these trucks continue to run a little bit longer. I've said it before and I'll say it again, guys. Right now, this market is crazy. It's hard to make money. So anything that you can do to prevent you from having issues, it's an automatic win. And I mean, the unit's not super expensive anyway. So with that being said, I hope I helped you guys out. If you guys like the content, give me a thumbs up, share the content, comment on it. Help me get monetized so I can continue making some videos, man. Subscribe. 98% of people who watch the videos are not subscribed. So it's free. Just hit the button and you're good to go. Anyhow, you guys have a good day. You guys stay safe out there. Peace out.